season when things are growing way faster than maybe we want, especially if you're the grass cutter, Jesus uses parables that come out of that time of growth. So let us listen. Jesus also said, the kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow, and he does not know how. The earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once he goes in with the sickle, because the harvest has come. Jesus also said, with what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable will we use for it? It is like a mustard seed, which when sown upon the ground is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when it is sown, it grows up and becomes the greatest of all shrubs, puts forth large branches, so that the birds of the air can make nests in his shade. With many such parables, Jesus spoke to them, and as they were able to hear it, he did not speak to them except in parables, but he explained everything in private to his disciples. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In 1956, a woman in India by the name of Santai Sullivan said, you know, what if every woman gave the least coin and we put it in a fund, and that least coin was a sign of her prayers for Christian unity, for her brothers and sisters, and that God's kingdom would come. Here we are in 2015, and the Fellowship of the Least Coin is an ecumenical group, which our Presbyterian women's have been a part of for as long as I've known, has provided funds out of those signs of the least coin. So for us, it would be a penny, which, you know, you can go anywhere and find pennies on the ground because people just throw them. They aren't worth anything, right? And yet from those least coins, we have, as women, supported mission work all around the world. Self-development of people is another ecumenical movement within Presbyterian, within the life of the Presbyterian Church. And what self-development of people does is gives micro loans or grants to little house cottage businesses. And through helping one family or one group of people have brought whole villages out of poverty and into a way of self-sufficiency. We are part of the Presbyterian Church USA. We have 10,053 worshiping congregations. Out of those 10,053 congregations, anybody want to take a guess at how many of them are smaller than 100 members? Anybody want to guess?
Over half.
What'd you say?
Over half.
Over half, actually. If I had a candy bar, I'd give it to you today. Yes, over half of us are less than 100. And less than 2% are what we would consider even close to a mega church, over 1,000 members. So we are a denomination of small churches. And yet, we do mighty work. As a matter of fact, I think in some ways, the smaller we have gotten, the greater our mission output per member has actually become. Jesus today is talking to folks in a city on the edge of civilization that is under rule of another nation. And they have chosen a couple of ways to deal with this. One, the religious leaders have tried to deal with it by accommodating the powers to be. And so what they've done is gone about, okay, we will put our trust in the temple, which was built by the Romans, by the way, in the sacrificial system, and in keeping the laws. If we can make the people outwardly look like they are godly people, then God will bless us. They didn't put it in God's grace. They put it in, we have to earn this. but they also put it in accommodating the Romans. Other folks were just hopeless. They just went about their life day to day, subsistent farmers, most of them, with not a whole lot of hope. So when Jesus talks to these people today, he is afflicting those who are making a really good living from the temple system. And he's providing for those who are afflicted comfort. Because what he first of all does is he compares the kingdom of God to a lazy farmer. And I'm not sure what translation this is, but I think it was the Revised Standard that we read from today. It said it's like someone who went out. But if you read it from one of the other translations, it says it's like a farmer who goes out and throws the seeds on the ground. He is so lazy, he does not even go out and get the soil ready. When I was in high school, my next younger sister got a thing of wildflowers. And she just took them outside and threw them in my mother's flower garden in a place where Mom hadn't gotten around to plant anything. She didn't till the ground. She didn't do anything. She just threw them out there. That was the most beautiful flower garden I've ever seen. I think every one of them came up and it was just gorgeous. It's that kind of a farmer. Somebody who has no idea what they're doing and they just go out, and in Greek, it's not even so. It's he threw them on the ground. And then he went to bed. He didn't do anything. And when the time came, the harvest was there. Now, this doesn't mean that Jesus is saying to us we need to be lazy farmers. But what he's saying is, where the kingdom of God is, the effort is God's, not ours. The harvest is because of God, not because of us. And that is great news for all of us who are, first of all, only one person. Have you ever thought, what can I do? I'm only me. It always seems that there is one more person with their hand out, one more need, one more something you should be doing. And do you ever think, what can I do? It's just me. And that's okay. Because we aren't just me. We're all just me together. And when each of us does whatever it is we do, that's throwing the seeds, and God brings the harvest. It's also good news for little churches. The mantra of little churches is, we're just a little church. How many of you said that? Come on, I've said it more than once. We're only a little church. I say it when people call up and want us to give money for something. You know, we're only a little church. But the reality is, we've always been a little church. The very first church was 12 men and a bunch of women that they don't even think it's important enough to tell us who they were, sitting in an upper room, who on the day of Pentecost, the movement of the Spirit sent them out to start preaching about this leader of theirs who had been crucified in a city off the beaten path before Facebook, instant messenger, whatever other way we have of communicating. And yet, the name of Jesus Christ is known around the world. Imagine our small churches, the average attendance on a Sunday morning. Anybody know what the average attendance is for PC USA Church on a Sunday morning? Anybody take a guess? Very close. 45. So the average attendance is 45. Count how many we are. We're real close to it, guys. The average attendance is still bigger than the first church. And we have far more resources than the first church. Far more resources. And so, if God could use those uneducated, folks who came from the working poor by and large, to carry God's message around the world, imagine what he does with all of our small congregations of somewhere around 30. We live in an age of TV superstars. Joel Osteen's, all of those folks that we see on TV. And if you watch them, don't tell me about it. But I've never made it the whole way through with Joel Osteen, because here is the prosperity gospel that he and his kind preach. If this church of Jesus Christ would just tell people what they want to hear, you'll grow very large. And he's the proof of that, because he tells people what they want to hear, because he preaches the prosperity gospel. If you believe in Jesus Christ and you follow these rules, whatever they happen to be in the week, you will be rich and you will have all the blessings of God. It's the prosperity gospel. It preaches well, because it doesn't require a whole lot of folks. And it certainly doesn't ever talk about sin or that you should do anything for other people. It talks about taking care of me. We aren't called to preach what people want, because people don't know what they want. It's to preach what they need. What people want is a new car, a bigger house, more money, good health, a sense of security, power, wealth, a new computer. That's what people want. What do people need? To belong, to be loved, to know Jesus Christ. It is in small churches that people come to know the love of God. It's one thing to preach the love of God. It's another thing to live the love of God. The easiest thing to do is to preach on Sunday morning, because you just tell everybody what they ought to do. The hardest thing to do is to do what we ought to do. It's really easy to say somebody should when we're actually the somebodies who should. I think yesterday I was down for the Relay for Life. And there's, as we saw last week, there's not a single person in this room who has not one way or another been touched by cancer. And the Relay for Life raises a lot of money, but the more important thing it raises is a lot of awareness of how we take care of ourselves. But those are all little individual people who get together, and when they get together, they do wonderful things. How many of you took the ice bucket challenge a year ago? How many of you know what that is? Okay, yeah. The ice bucket challenge started because one person got on the internet and challenged somebody else. And how many of us even knew what ALS was before? You did, you're nurses. I didn't know. And yet, everybody's lining up to do research on ALS, which is a horrible disease. Why? Because one person challenged, and before long it had gone around the world. We are each one person, but together we're more people. We band together in Christ, and we do walk by faith, not by sight. I cannot even tell you how many things I've watched start one way, and what grows out of them is not ever what we planned. You know, we sit at Vision Team and we make plans for the future. And it's a good group on Vision Team, because we are open to the fact that sometimes God doesn't do what we think we were going to do. And sometimes we don't touch people the way we thought we were, but God takes our efforts. This is God's church. The kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of God will come about because of God's work, using our small labors. Let us pray. God of power,